Hello friends, this is Shivam Dubey from English Kingdom, Katra, Prayagraj. Welcome to the class. We are continue with Ernest Hemingway, and these days we are studying the American literature for PGT English. In our previous classes, we could cover some other American writers including Walt Whitman and Robert Frost. We could go with tests on those great writers, and definitely here we starting with a novelist. Formerly they had been, as you see, the poets, but this time, good evening dears, this time it is a novelist, story writer, and that is Ernest Miller Hemingway. In previous class, we could cover some of the points that's related to the life of Ernest Hemingway, including his parentage, his schooling, his occupation, his friendship, his affairs and marital status, his death, and some of the awards that he could receive in his lifetime that we could discuss. Before we left the class, we decided to go with the question session on Ernest Hemingway, and I told you that after completing this question session, good evening Kalpana, after completing this question session, we will move to the works of Ernest Hemingway at a glance. And from the topic of the class today, you may have guessed that we are going to be continue with this one, and that would be Ernest Hemingway works at a glance. Okay, well, there are not so many works under his name, but whatever the works are there under his name, we can go with the estimation, with the description, good evening Gayatri, of them. And as I told you, before we go to the description of those works, we have to go through the question session, and that would be based on the former teachings of Ernest Hemingway that we could do here in the class. So the first question of the day is here. Definitely this question is related to the biography of Ernest Hemingway, not more than that. Well, so the first question of the day is here. What was the name of the father of Ernest Hemingway? I repeat, what was the name of the father of Ernest Hemingway? As the first question of the day, the name of the father of Ernest Hemingway. Hopefully you guys have prepared the lesson, because you can enjoy this question session only when you are giving proper time to your preparation. Okay, and we have one answer there on the screen that comes from Gayatri, and she has answered it correct to be Clarence Edmond Hemingway. Exactly, Clarence Edmond Hemingway was the father of Ernest Hemingway. Okay, Kalpana, going with the next. When was Ernest Hemingway born? The next question is here. When was Ernest Hemingway born? That's the next question. I repeat, when was Ernest Hemingway born? And we have the answers there on the screen. That starts with the reply of Gayatri. She is followed by Kalpana. The right answer is 21st July 1899. Exactly, 21st July 1899 was the date of the birth of Ernest Hemingway? 21st July 1899. What was the name of the younger brother of Ernest Hemingway? What was the name of the younger brother of Ernest Hemingway? What was the name of the younger brother of Ernest Hemingway? Well, Salman, welcome. Well, so the right answer is there from Gayatri, and she has answered it correct, that it's Leicester Hemingway. Exactly. Leicester was the younger brother of Ernest Hemingway. And now we'll move to the next question, as we are going through the question session on Ernest Hemingway for the biographical records, and we have the next question here. What was the name of the mother of Ernest Hemingway? What was the name of the mother of Ernest Hemingway? What was the name of the mother of Ernest Hemingway? And we have the answer there on the screen that comes to us from Gayatri. Okay, Gayatri. She has answered it correct, to be Grace Hall Hemingway. Exactly. Grace Hall Hemingway was, okay, Kalpana, the right answer as the mother of Ernest Hemingway. Moving with the next. What was the father of Ernest Hemingway? Means, what was the profession of the father of Ernest Hemingway, Clarence Edmonds Hemingway? What was the profession of Clarence Edmonds Hemingway? I repeat the question. What was the profession of the father of Ernest Hemingway? And we have the answer there on the screen that we received from Gayatri, and she is followed by Kalpana. They have answered it correct. The right answer is physician. Exactly. The right answer is physician here. Going with the next. What was the name of the sister of Ernest Hemingway with whom he performed in school orchestra? What was the name of the sister of Ernest Hemingway with whom he performed at school orchestra? Remember, during his school days, he could get chances to perform in his school orchestra with his sister, and the name is there on the screen that comes to us from Gayatri, and she has answered it correct. The right answer is Marceline. Okay, Kalpana. The two have the right answers. Marceline, that was there. Okay, going with the next. What was the pen name of Ernest Hemingway when he was writing for his school magazine and newspaper? What was the pen name of Ernest Hemingway when he was writing for his school newspaper and book? I repeat, what was the pen name of Ernest Hemingway when he was writing for his school magazine and newspaper? Okay, and we have the answer there on the screen that comes from Gayatri, and she answers correct, to be Ring Lardner Jr. Exactly. Ring Lardner Jr. was the pen name of Ernest Hemingway when he was writing for his school newspaper and magazine. What was the name of the teacher who taught journalism to Ernest Hemingway at Oak Park and River Forest High School. What was the name of the teacher who taught journalism to Ernest Hemingway at Oak Park and River Forest High School? River Forest High School, where Ernest Hemingway entered in 1913 and continued till 1917. He got a chance to study journalism under a teacher, and the right answer, we receive it here on the screen, coming from Gayatri, and she is followed by somewhat Kalpana. They have answered it correct. The right answer is Fanny Biggs. Okay, going with the next question. When did Ernest Hemingway receive the Nobel Prize? When did Ernest Hemingway receive the Nobel Prize? That's quite an easy question, commonly known and asked the question. When did Ernest Hemingway receive the Nobel Prize? And the answers are there on the screen, coming from Gayatri, and she is followed by Kalpana. They have answered it correct. The right answer is 1954, exactly. In 1954, God bless you, competition zone. Good evening, Preeti. Well, now Preeti has also answered it to be 1954 as the, okay, Kalpana, for the novella, The Old Man and the Sea, exactly. Going with the next question. What were the names of the sisters of, okay, Shailen. What were the names of the sisters of Ernest Hemingway? I repeat, what were the names of the sisters of Ernest Hemingway? That's an easy question again. The names of the sisters of Ernest Hemingway. There were the three sisters, as you see, and two brothers. Brothers had been Ernest and Leicester. And the question is here for the sisters, the names of the sisters of Ernest Hemingway. Okay, and we receive answer there on the screen from Gayatri. She has answered it correct to be Marceline, Sunny and Ursula. Marceline, Sunny and Ursula. They had been the sisters of Ernest Hemingway. After whose name was Ernest Hemingway named? Okay, Preeti, try to be quick. After whose name was Ernest Hemingway named? You know, there had been lots of saying on Ernest Hemingway being hateful to the name that he had, especially he did not like the name Ernest. There had been some reasons, and one of the reasons was the knave and foolish hero of the play by Oscar Wilde. That was the importance of being earnest. And the next was his own mother, as you see. Oh, no, Gayatri. The name of Ernest Hemingway was not named after the protagonist of the play, the importance of being earnest. Actually, the name he received after his maternal grandfather. You know, his maternal grandfather was Ernest Hall, means father of Grace Hall. And that's why he was named. So his name is from his maternal grandfather. Later on, when he grew up, he thought that his name is not suitable because it's matching to the comical name of the very humorous character and knavish character actually from the play of Oscar Wilde. So then he started disliking his own name. Okay, which branch of learning was Grace Hall, the mother of Ernest Hemingway, related to? Which branch of learning Grace Hall, the mother of Ernest Hemingway, related to? Means like father was a physician, what was his mother? What was the mother of Ernest Hemingway? Okay, and we see some answer there on the screen. Okay, that's a good one, Nandini. And she is followed by Gayatri, Kalpana, and Preeti. They have all answered it correct. The right answer is musician. Exactly. Father was physician and mother was musician. Though he hated his mother, he did not like his mother, but later on he accepted that when he was writing some poems, he could see the influence of his mother in his poetry, because some of the pieces he could write as a poetry as well. Okay, going with the next question. What was the name of the school newspaper, Oak Park and River Forest High School? What was the name of the school newspaper or publishing magazine, you can say? The school that Ernest Hemingway was related was Oak Park and River Forest High School. So name of the newspaper of the school, Oak Park and River Forest High School, is there on the screen, coming from Gayatri, and she is followed by Nandini. They have answered it correct, and the right answer is trapeze. Exactly, Kalpana. The trapeze is the right answer, as the poet was related and he submitted his story to this school magazine. Okay, going with the next question. When was the first story of Ernest Hemingway published? When was the first literary piece of Ernest Hemingway was published? No doubt, the first story of Ernest Hemingway was published in his school magazine, Trapeze, and the answers are there on the screen. And the right answer is starting there from Nandini, and she is followed by Preeti, Gayatri, Kalpana. They have answered it correct, to be January 1916. Exactly, Nandini. The newspaper was Trapeze, that was a school newspaper, and in that there was a story, especially a piece from Ernest Hemingway. Okay, what's the name of the lady who first deserted Ernest Hemingway? What was name of the lady who first deserted Ernest Hemingway? What was the name of the lady who first deserted Ernest Hemingway? You know, the lady has been very essential in his life, and after that his whole life changed. Oh, no, Nandini, not exactly the same name. Just here. Okay, right, you changed. That's good one, Gayatri and Nandini. Agnes von Korosky. Exactly. Agnes von Korosky, whom he could meet in 1918. Okay, Kalpana. And later on she deserted him, and the result is visible throughout his life. As you see, He was just once rejected, or you can say deserted by a lady, and throughout his life he kept deserting ladies. And as you see in a record, there had been the 4 marriages of Ernest Hemingway, and all 4 wives almost, except Mary, they have been deserted by him. Okay, going to the next. What was the name of the work for which Ernest Hemingway received the Pulitzer Prize? What was name of the work for which Ernest Hemingway received the Pulitzer Prize? Okay, and the right answer is there on the screen from Gayatri, and she is followed by Nandini. Okay, thank you, Nandini. And now it is Preeti. They have all answered it correct. The right answer is The Old Man and the Sea, and he received this prize in 1953. The Old Man and the Sea, that was published in 1952, and he received this prize, Pulitzer Prize, in 1953. Okay. When was Ernest Hemingway wounded by a mortar fire serving on behalf of the Red Cross in Italian front? When was Ernest Hemingway wounded by a mortar on the Italian front serving for the Red Cross? Serving for the Red Cross, when was Ernest Hemingway wounded by a mortar on the Italian front? And we have the answers there on the screen, starting with Gayatri, followed by Preeti, Kalpana, and they have all answered it correct, but not very exact one. The date was 8th July 1918. 8th July 1918, he was fatally wounded by a mortar on Italian front, but he kept serving there for the life of the other. Exactly, Nandini, and he was hospitalized for 6 months, relieved almost in January 1919. Okay, when did Ernest Hemingway get married to Hadley Richardson? When did Ernest Hemingway get married to Hadley Richardson? Hadley Richardson was the first wife of Ernest Hemingway. When did he get married to Hadley Richardson? Okay, and we have certain answers there on the screen. We receive it coming from Gayatri, and much better is from Nandini. Now Kalpana. Okay. Preeti, okay, Gayatri and Santosh. So the right answer is 3rd September 1921. 3rd September 1921. He got married to his first wife, and that was Hadley Richardson. Okay, going with the next one. What was the name of the 19-year-old girl with whom Hemingway started an affair, or you can say platonic love affair, in 1948? What was the name of the 19-year-old girl with whom Ernest Hemingway started a platonic love affair in 1948? Okay, and we have the answer there on the screen, and that starts with the reply of Gayatri. She is followed by Nandini. Now it is Anuradha. They have all answered it correct. To be Adriana Ivanovich, not is Kalpana and Preeti. They have all answered it correct. Okay, now I'll move to the next. What was the nickname of Gregory Hancock Hemingway? What was the nickname of Gregory Hancock Hemingway? You know, Gregory Hancock Hemingway was the second son of Pauline and third son of Ernest Hemingway. Gregory Hancock Hemingway had a short name, that was his nickname. My question is from there. What was that nickname? And we receive an answer there on the screen that starts with the reply of Nandini. She is followed by Kalpana. Now it is Gayatri. They have answered it correct. And the right answer is Gloria. Exactly. Gloria was the nickname of Gregory Hancock Hemingway as the third son of Ernest Hemingway, born on 12th November, actually Nandini, check it, 12th November 1931, not 1940, because in 1940 Pauline was not there. There had been divorce from Pauline and now he was married to his third wife, so he cannot be said as a correct man to a correct timing. No. Preeti, just check. In 1940, he got married to Martha, so no chance. Okay, it's a Pauline, actually. Well, now I'll move to the next question. That's going to be the last as well. When did Ernest Hemingway breathe his last? When did Ernest Hemingway breathe his last? This is going to be the last question from the question session. Actually, I was enjoying this question session with you all, and I could not see the time. Regular timing from the question session is around 20 minutes, but I think more than 27 minutes we have here been. And very soon after this question, we'll move to the works of Ernest Hemingway at a glance that we will discuss here. Okay, and we received certain answer on the date of his death, and we receive it from yes, let's go with the right answer. Kalpana has answered, though it was quite rough answer. She tried. Well, so much better and correct one is from Gayatri. She is followed by, okay, Anuradha, Preeti, Nandini, Kalpana, Santosh. They have all answered it correct. The right answer is 2nd July 1961. That was the date he breathed his last after shooting himself dead. You know, Ernest Hemingway shot himself dead, and you may say that he committed a kind of suicide that we don't welcome as the right thing. But yes, it was a problem in his family. It is said that his father, Clarence Edmonds, also committed suicide, and his sister, I think later on his brother, Leicester, as well committed suicide, and he shot himself dead with his favorite gun, shotgun, at his own home. So that was all from the question session, and right, it's time for us to move to the works of Ernest Hemingway at a glance. In our previous details, exactly Nandini, we could go that Ernest Hemingway, before starting writing literary pieces, he was actually a journalist. From journalism, he entered the world of literature, and it is said that at first, actually, when he was at his school, Oak Park and River Forest High School, under the guidance of or supervision of Fanny Biggs, he learned there that writing is best with the small sentences, and that helped him when he was writing for different periodicals and news papers and magazines. It seemed that after January 1916, he was a bit serious to pursue his literary career, and then he moved, but he had no material actually, because it was time of his turbulence. He wanted to go and be the part of soldiers, have experience of the First World War. That could happen with him. And later on when he came, he was actually deserted by Agnes, started affair, once again 8 years senior. You know, Hadley Richardson was 8 years senior to him. Agnes was 7 years senior to him. And I must say, when man's psychology is there, or you can say that man dominance is there, man do not find himself very safe or very secure under motherly, I must say, motherly wife, and that would have been the feeling of Ernest Hemingway. And later on he decided to go away, and as soon as he meets Pauline, as I told you, in January 1926, Pauline Pfeiffer comes in their life, and in January 1927 they divorced, and later on he got married to Pauline. So he was actually in a state when he was unable to decide what should he do, and he had a lot of materials. He needed the helps, and he had great company, as you see, the company of Ezra Pound, James Joyce. He had Gertrude Stein and John Dos Passos. They all had been around him, and he had been in Paris, the experience of the lost generation, and then he decided to write exactly the material. Most of the time in his stories are personal. His iceberg theory, we will discuss later. Ernest Hemingway gave his iceberg theory. We'll discuss this one as a theory of omission. You can say iceberg theory. This theory is a kind of theory of omission. You can say sometimes the writer, at his own will, according to his own desire, he may omit something to maintain a kind of secrecy, you can say, kind of privacy, you can say, or you can say that it is the art of a literary person that he does not want everything to reveal the readers very easily. So make some thing like secret he may have decided to go with. So you see that the iceberg theory, simply in a one line you can understand, is a theory of omission, and this was the term that was given by Ernest Hemingway himself. He himself gave this term. Later on we will discuss what is iceberg theory, but today I just introduce you this theory is specially related to him and the lost generation that he come into contact under the supervision, you can say, of Gertrude Stein in Paris, who introduced this term lost generation to a group of writers. And later on Ernest Hemingway himself could feel to be the part of this lost generation, especially with the introduction of his own novel The Sun Also Rises. With that he could share his experience of the lost generation, and the iceberg theory also starts there. Now it's time for us to move to the works of his. The first work from him is actually the collection, and the name of the collection is 3 Stories and 10 Poems. The first work of Ernest Hemingway that was published as a collection is 3 Stories and 10 Poems. 3 Stories and 10 Poems. This was the first collection of Ernest Hemingway, and was published in 1923. It was published in 1923. So you may say that 1923 marks his the professional writer, and this was actually published in Paris by publishing company Contact Publishing. Published by Contact Publishing, and this publishing was in Paris. So the first work of Ernest Hemingway as a professional writer was published there in Paris with the title 3 Stories and 10 Poems, and was done in 1923. Was actually the publication of the publishing house Contact Publishing, that was done by Robert McAlmon. Robert McAlmon was the publisher, and Contact Publishing was the publishing house, and as it was published in Paris, so Contact Publishing, Robert McAlmon, 1923, they all collectively mark the beginning of his career as a professional writer in 1923. Then comes his next, and that is In Our Time. In Our Time was actually the collection of stories that had 18 stories in 1923, and it was published by the Little Review. See the next work, as I told you, In Our Time. In Our Time. This had been the collection of stories and was published in 1923 by the Little Review. There had been 18 stories, I told you, collection of stories, and was published by the Little Review. The Little Review. It was also done in 1923. 1923, 1924, that will mark as the writing and publishing time of In Our Time. There are the 2 editions of In Our Time. One that was In Our Time without capitals, means this was without capital letter. Without capital letters. And the next edition appears in 1925. That was done by Bonnie and Leverett In Our Time, was published by Bonnie and Leverett. And this time one more story. See here, you got 18 story, and for In Our Time, that was in capital letters, we have additional stories, and now this time there are 19 stories. Just one additional story was done there in 1925 edition of In Our Time, that was published on 5th October. 5th October 1925. This was with capital letters. See, the first one was without capital letters, and this time it was with capital letter. So you simply see that there had been 19 stories. The next is the novella, The Torrents of Spring. The Torrents of the Spring. This had been a novella and was published in 1925 as a novella. So novella is there in 1925, as you see. It is novella, The Torrents of the Spring. The next one is, remember, this work especially, he attacked Sherwood Anderson. Attacked Sherwood Anderson. The next work was there, and that is Indian Camp. Though Indian Camp is a story that was published in Our Time and was published independently in a collection in 1926, Indian Camp. We will discuss this later. Indian Camp as a story. The next one is The Sun Also Rises. The Sun Also Rises. That is the almost first novel of Ernest Hemingway that was published by Scribner's son, Charles Scribner's sons, and the publication was done in 1926 as his first novel. First novel was The Sun Also Rises and was done in 1926, and here starts a kind of mutual relation between the long-time publishers of Ernest Hemingway, and that was Charles Scribner's sons. The next was actually again his experience after almost deserting Hadley Richardson, coming into the contact with his second wife, Pauline Pfeiffer. He could feel something, how a person, especially a man, spends his time without a woman. So the next collection is here, Men Without Women. The next work, as we are going to discuss, is a short story collection, Men Without Women. Men Without Women. As I told you, is a story collection. And was published in October 1927. October 1927, and the publication was again done by Charles Scribner's son. Charles Scribner's sons published it. I just told you that in January 1927, he got divorced from what kind of sound, Nandini? I'm just what kind of sound, Nandini? I'm just what kind of sound, Nandini? Exactly, Satish. I'm live here. Okay. Nandini, what can we do to these dogs? They also feel accompanied by me, especially when I'm teaching here. They enjoy my company and they like, okay, someone like of theirs is there and making sounds. So this is why it's a joyful time to give them company. So we all are enjoying. Actually, the voice is mine, but you guys are also giving them company. So just enjoy. Okay. So, Men Without Women was published in October 1927 as a story collection by Charles Scribner. Okay, well, we're going with the next one, and that is Death in the Afternoon. That is the collection, Death in the Afternoon. Is the next work of Ernest Hemingway in our estimation and was published in 1932. Remember, this work was actually written just after 1927 and got its publication form actually in 1929, but not published before 1929. It's a form, but publication was done in 1932. So first published in 1932. Okay, the format of the Death in the Afternoon was ready in 1929, but it could not be published there, and in 1932 it was published. The next is again the novel A Farewell to Arms. A Farewell to Arms is again his own war experience that he included in it in 1929 and was published in a magazine 1929 and was published by Charles Scribner's Sons, and this publication was done between May and October. This was published between May and October 1929. So the publication was done by Charles Scribner's between May and October 1929, entitled Farewell to Arms as a novel of Ernest Hemingway. The next was his a kind of tour, Green Hills of Africa. Green Hills of Africa. That was his travelogue, we say. 1934, it got its publication, Green Hills of Africa. The next one is here, The Short Happy Life of Francis Macomber. The Short Happy Life, the Short Happy Life of Francis Macomber. This was the next work in our estimation for discussion. That was a short story published in September 1935. September 1935, and was actually published by a magazine named Cosmopolitan. Published by Cosmopolitan. There, the story was actually serialized story. Was in September 1935 in Cosmopolitan. That was a magazine to serialize it. The next one is The Snows of Kilimanjaro. The Snows of Kilimanjaro. Again, this had been a kind of travelogue. The Snows of Kilimanjaro was a kind of travelogue, and it takes the form of a story as well. Was published by Squire magazine in 1936. Published by Esquire magazine in 1936. The publication was done, and as told you, it takes the form of a story, though it had the experience of his visiting Kilimanjaro, so that experience he included there. The next is a novel, To Have and Have Not. To Have and Have Not is a novel of Ernest Hemingway that he got published by Charles Scribner's Sons in 1937. Charles Scribner's Sons in 1937. There had been the publication of his next novel, To Have and Have Not. Ernest Hemingway during 1937 had been on his tour to Sweden and had the experience of getting the experience actually of Spanish Civil War. He was asked to write something related to Spanish Civil War, and there another change in his life comes, and as you see that he got a chance to make another shift, another move in his life, and decided to leave Pauline Payfoe. And actually, with Pauline Payfoe, this was a very fruitful time, but he thought it's quite a long time with Pauline Payfoe and changed to Martha. Going with the next work of his, that was again his tour experience on the blue water. On the blue water. This work on the blue water included the complete heading like On the Blue Water, a Gulf Stream Letter, was published in April 1936. April 1936 it got publication. Moving with the next work, that was the fifth column, as we discussed earlier. The fifth column was his only play. That he completed in 1937. And in 1938, he got his only play, the fifth column, published. Again, the publication was done by Charles Scribner's son. Charles Scribner's sons published this only play of Ernest Hemingway in 1938 as the only play. The next one is his novel, and that was For Whom the Bell Tolls. For Whom the Bell Tolls. This was the next novel of his, a renowned one, that got its publication in 1940 on 21st October. 21st October 1940. The novel was published, and the publication was again done by the same Charles Scribner's son. Charles Scribner's sons published For Whom the Bell Tolls. The next work is his unfinished work, The Garden of Eden. Last day we discussed the Garden of Eden that could not be completed in 1946. I told you this was unfinished work of his that remained unfinished. The next one is the Sea Book, again unfinished one. You remember? The Sea Book. This included actually as a trilogical pattern with the titles of The Land, the Sea, the Air. The land, the sea, the air. And the book was, as I told you, in a form of a trilogy. Though it was also unfinished one. The same year of the Garden of Eden, 1946, started, and the book stood unfinished with the three novels, possible novels, The Land, the Sea, and the Air. The next one is Across the River into the Trees. Across the river and into the trees. That is another novel of Ernest Hemingway that he got published in 1950. At first was published by the Cosmopolitan. Published first as a serialized work, Later on, it was published by, in 1950, Charles Scribner's son. Charles Scribner's Sons published it in 1950 as a complete book novel. The Old Man and the Sea. No doubt this book is a big name. The Old Man and the Sea. This had been a kind of novella. Was completed and published in 1952, and the publication was done by Charles Scribner's Sons. Charles Scribner's Sons. I told you that this only work, I must say, made Ernest Hemingway immortal. And he received Pulitzer Prize in 1953, as I discussed earlier, 1953. And in 1954, he received for this one the Nobel Prize. So 1954 Nobel Prize, 1953 it's the Pulitzer Prize, and 1952 it was published by Charles Scribner's and Charles Scribner's Sons in 1952. The next one is Islands in the Streams. Islands in the Streams. Islands in the streams. Sorry, stream actually, not a streams. That's a lesser known a work of Ernest Hemingway, got its publication in the year of 1959. 1959. We can say gradually we are moving towards his last works, that his identity or his name and fame rests upon. And well, after this one, the Island in the Streams, we had actually the three big names as his work under his name. The next one is more famous, A Movable Feast. I think every one of you know A Movable Feast. A Movable Feast. This was a work that he finished in 1959. This was finished actually in 1959, but was published as a memoir, as posthumous work in December 1964. December 1964. This was published as a posthumous work. The two publications it received, one that it received by Charles Scribner's Sons in USA, and the next publication was done by Jonathan Cape in UK. Jonathan Cape in UK. So that was the two publication of the work. I have told you, posthumous work, posthumous publication on and as I told you, it's a kind of memoir. So it's a genre, a memoir. That's based on his memory. The next one is True at First Light. True at First Light. This work also seems to be completed in 1959, possibly completed. We cannot be sure because later on it was edited. But yes, he started in 59 and was published on 7th July 1999. 7th July 1999 published. Means writing was done in 1959 and his 100th anniversary. Remember, it's going to be 100th anniversary, birth anniversary of Ernest Hemingway, and the novel True at First Light was published. We have The Dangerous Summer, the last one for our discussion. The Dangerous Summer. That was his meditation of 1960. The Dangerous Summer during his lifetime, 1960, and got its publication on 24th June 1985. 24th June 1985. This work was published. The publication was done here. Means before this it was not published. In 1960 it was not published. Possibly it was written between October 1959 and May 1960. Possibly this work was written. The Dangerous Summer was possibly written between October 1959 and published in May 1960. That is actually, it's the creation time that we can mark, and later on, as I told you, it got its time for the publication on 24th June 1985. 24th June 1985 it was published. The later publication that were done were actually with addition of some points that were included by his son Patrick, and some of the points were related by his wife Mary as well, because not the same material that he could write in earlier stage could find its place, could find its space in the later edition of Ernest Hemingway. As I told you that his life was full of adventures. So is about his writing. His stories you will explore that they present his adventurous nature. His novels you will explore present his adventurous nature. All the time he had been moving around the war and war effects, be it World War I, be it Spanish Civil War, be it actually the experiences of the Second World War as well. He could make them as a part, be it his own relations or affairs. Because I always say, a literary person makes the blending of personal and public experiences together and places it for the enjoyment of the readers from both point of view, and that is individuality and the respect of this society or dignity of society as well. So this was all actually about the works of Ernest Hemingway that we can see at a glance with the publishers, with their date of publications, and yes, their genres have been also discussed, whether they are novel or their stories, they are the play that had been a novella. And the next days when we will start with some of the work of his, because this had been the works at a glance, and next will be detailed. So that's all for me. Thanks a lot for watching, keep learning, and keep working hard. Thank you very much.